Yes, good afternoon. This is the Vanguard Show on podcast, episode number 10. This is Sunday, November 15th, 2020. It's 11 a.m., 11:15, I should say, 11:22, I'm sorry, a.m. here in Atlanta. And it's 4:22 in London, where we have a very distinguished guest, which we'll definitely bring on in 1 second. The Vanguard Show is being sponsored by From Old Guard to Vanguard, the book, as well as the From Old Guard to Vanguard photo exhibit. So go ahead and refer to the Facebook pages for both of them. And today's special guest, and I want to say Sir Alex Wheatle, award-winning, world-renowned novelist, writer, author. He hails from London, and as well as I call him Brixton's own. And I want to definitely welcome here to the Vanguard Show. And how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's nice to be with you from London.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I was going to ask you, first of all, how are you doing in the midst of this pandemic? And how are you with your family and as well as colleagues?
Well, we're under lockdown. The Prime Minister said that we have to remain under lockdown until December the 2nd. So that means we're not allowed to visit anybody in their homes. We're only allowed out to go to work or to go to the supermarket to get food. And so it's very frustrating, especially for me, because writers, we're isolated so long anyway, because we work from home anyway. But I like to engage with the audience. I like to teach. I teach at Manchester Metropolitan University. I like to visit schools and colleges and universities. And so I'm a bit frustrated. It's been long. It's been long, and we need to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, I think that applies to everyone around the world,
Yeah.
certainly. And I want to definitely get into the response, to Kane Warriors, your latest literary
Yeah.
masterpiece. Tell us about Kane Warriors and the response that it has gotten.
The response has been incredible. I'm really overwhelmed by the feedback and the reviews. It came about after a conversation with my mother, who lives in the US, by the way. She lives in Washington, D.C.,
Oh,
with my
okay.
sister
Okay.
in the Silver Spring area, if anyone knows where.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation about 2 or 3 years ago because she grew up in the small town of Richmond in St. Mary, Jamaica. And
Hmm.
this is adjacent to where Chief Tacky led his slave revolt in 1760.
Yes.
My mother wasn't quite aware of that, but she remembers as a very young girl, about 5 or 6 or 7 years of age, her elders mentioning Tacky's name.
Hmm.
And Tacky's revolt is not as well known as the revolts led by Sam Sharp and Paul Bogle.
Hmm.
And so, really, when I started to research Tacky's slave revolt, it just blew my mind. I felt this has to be recorded and written about on a much grander scale than has been already. And so that really set me on the path to writing Kane Warriors.
Okay. And in terms of it's based in Jamaica, and
Yeah,
there's this young man is how do you pronounce his name? Is it Noah?
Moa,
Moa. I'm sorry, Moa.
Moa, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How did you relate to a character named Moa and all the circumstances around the book that he seems to be the central figure?
Yes. Well, under my research, I discovered that if you was a young boy, even 11, 12, 13, 14 years of age, you were expected to work in the cane field and you suffered the same punishment as any older man. And that was very depressing for me, very dispiriting. And so I felt the narrative would be much more interesting and fascinating if I told the story from a young boy's perspective, because he's a young boy. I felt that the what was going through his mind through these traumatic events. I mean, every day, can you imagine it? In fact, just recently, I had a letter from someone from Louisiana who had read the book and said that they have their own history of cane fields in that part of the US. And so I really wanted to present this story to the world, from the perspective of a very young person rather than Chief Tacky himself. And the response has been incredible. It really has. So I look
Okay.
forward when this lockdown's over to promote the book in the US.
Okay, and we look forward to seeing you in Atlanta, hopefully as
Yeah,
well. Now, my wife is from Louisiana, and I think you're referring to the Thibodeau massacre based around the sugarcane
yeah.
plantation time.
Yes, I am. So hopefully this can relate to readers in Louisiana and further afield. I really hope so because we need to start speaking our narrative. What this
Hmm.
year has taught us is that our stories matter and our histories matter. And so it's all good and fine tearing down statues and tossing them into bays and harbors. But for greater impact, we need our young people to start reading what has gone on before with their ancestors and how they fought against racism and all kinds of oppression. And so hopefully Kane Warriors can be part of that. And I really hope that we will see more narratives like that and it will start to be included in curriculums, not just in the UK, but in the US and everywhere else where these oppressions took place.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the questions I have is what got you started with writing?
I had quite a traumatic childhood. I was raised in a children's home. It was quite a brutal place just outside London. And so I grew up with a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness. And I didn't know my family at that point. I haven't got enough time to explain why I ended up in care, but unfortunately, I did up to the age of 15. And when I went to Brixton, South London, that is where most of the West Indian community lived at that point in time. This is in the mid 1970s. I started to reclaim my identity, and I had this need because I was so traumatized. I had this need to express myself. And at first, initially, that came with me keeping a diary, writing poetry, writing lyrics, because me and my friends, we built a reggae sound system. And so that offered me an opportunity for me to voice what I was carrying inside. And so, really, I had no illusions of becoming an author. I just wanted to heal myself. Writing for me, when I was very young, when I was 15, 16, 17, was a form of therapy.
Okay. Yeah. And also, I was going to ask, in terms of, James Baldwin once said that, uh, he has quoted saying, "Read, read, read," and when you can no longer read, write.
Hmm.
Were you a voracious reader
Yes,
prior
I
to writing?
was.
Okay.
Even when I was young, it was mainly comics when I was 6, 7, 8. Because I guess reading, and if you engage in a narrative, even if it's a comic strip, that takes me away from my daily grind, my daily pain. It offered me a solace, if you like.
Okay.
And so in my early years, I read many comics. I love comics. And then later on, especially when I served a spell in prison when I was 18, following the Brixton riots, that is when I got into writers like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, and the great C.L.R. James, and the rest of the Harlem Renaissance writers. I remember reading Langston Hughes, the poetry of Langston Hughes, and
Yeah.
that just filled me with great energy and great love of history.
Well, I definitely had my wife do some extra research on you, and she was actually mad at me because I kept so much away from her. She said, "He is amazing." I'm gonna get my wife to just talk about her, experience with you.
So one of it, I actually went back on YouTube, and some of your information is all the way back to 7 years ago. And so
Wow.
I actually watched all the different. I actually did what those kids today call couch, whatever it is that you watch video after video. So I was enticed, and I just kept going and going and going and hearing your story. And to say the person that you are today, I have to say it's inspirational. So
Thank
I
you.
do want to tell you that I really appreciate you sharing your life with us, the world.
Thank
So
you very much. That
you're
is,
welcome. And
that
I
is,
enjoyed one of them. I actually saw. It was actually when you recently did. It was with kids, and I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. I think it was Dream Art. There was a workshop
yeah,
you did,
that's right.
and can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that? Because that touched my heart.
I've always been, since I've been published, I've always tried to encourage kids to read and take part in reading and writing for themselves and creating art for themselves. For me, as I said before, it's like a healer. It's like therapy, especially if those kids are vulnerable or fragile in any kind of way or exposed in any kind of way, like I was. And sometimes I think in education, we miss a trick of not introducing the arts to these vulnerable kids. I think it really helps them come to terms with what's happened to them. And so I've worked for the last 20 years in this field. I used to do lots of work in prisons and young adult institutions to help young people come to terms with what's happened to them and try to heal them through art, through reading, through writing. Sometimes it could be just helping them to write a letter home and connect with their siblings or their uncles or their aunts and so on. But I'm not sure if you're aware that this new television series directed by Steve McQueen, the Small Axe series that's opening tonight in the UK, is going to open in the US in 5 days' time. And one of the episodes will be about my young life. I understand it will be broadcast in the US on December the 11th. So that can be something to put in the diary for your listeners.
Oh,
December
definitely.
11th.
So
Steve
please,
McQueen Small Axe series. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's the movie director Steve McQueen.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, very very well renowned. He has some wonderful things to say about you and all your literary works, particularly Kane Warriors as well. I read a lot of the reviews. It was amazing.
Well, I understand that he filmed 12 Years a Slave near Atlanta.
Yes. Yes.
So I understand that. So he knows your part of the world very well. He was telling me.
Oh, okay. All right.
So one day I'd really love to come and visit you face to face, be in person.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could take me out for one of those soul hot meals that I hear so much about.
We got you covered.
Right.
and I was going to say another thing that I enjoyed was you actually don't put a color on your books. It's for everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know from our side, you probably get pressure saying, hey, this is a Black author. You know, this is our book. We appreciate that it's coming from a person of color because, you know, it's so rare to see that they give us the exposure that, as you stated in one, I know in London, there was like a list of 20 of the best top selling, and how you stated over the years, there was never a Black person that was within that list. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then also you talk about that your book is not just for one color.
Absolutely. And when you look back in books that I've read, for example, The Godfather. Now, The Godfather is basically about Italian Americans or Italians in Sicily or whatever. And I would never describe that book only aimed for the Italian American audience. I could enjoy it. I'm sure you could enjoy it. So it can be enjoyed by everybody. And so I do have a problem with how our industry, the publishing industry in the UK and the US, have at times only promoted books for a Black audience, when our narrative is universal. Wherever you are, doesn't matter if you're in New Zealand or Georgia or anywhere else. I really expect Kane Warriors to be marketed just as aggressively in those territories rather than just towards a Black audience, because our history, our stories, our experiences, they're for everybody to read about and learn about and to educate themselves about. And so I try not to be boxed in, because they love to box you in. They love to try to say to you that your story is only for a Black audience. No, it's not. Because why is it that a white writer, they don't have to deal with this? You know, they publish a book and they expect everyone to read it, and rightly so. And so now, again, with this Black Lives Matter movement that is really filled me with encouragement this year, I really hope that our narrative, our stories, our art doesn't have to be writing, but it could be someone sculpting, it could be someone painting a picture for a nice museum or wherever it may be. Our art should be enjoyed and promoted on the same level, without a doubt.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to let you know is that we were in London last year, and we had a chance to go around, but the first place I wanted to go was Brixton. Can you describe your Brixton and how it shaped you, and even up to the part of the riots and then the impact it had on you directly? Could you go into that?
Well, I guess my Brixton has changed from when I was 15, 16, 17. I remember walking down Brixton Hill, and then as soon as you hit central Brixton, you hear reggae music everywhere. Reggae music. We had about something like 6 or 7 reggae record shops where you could buy your reggae, where all the sound system guys hang out. And obviously the food, the market stalls where you could buy your West Indian cuisine. I mean, now when you go there, you can get foods from all over the world. But in my time, when I was a young teenager, it was mainly West Indian or Jamaican. And then there was this energy, this creative energy. And I loved that. I really did love that. But obviously, because of there were mainly Jamaicans who populated the town, we had the police oppression going on. And this had been going on for many, many years. It wasn't just the early 1980s, but you could go back to the late 1950s when my father arrived in Brixton. And he would tell me stories of how sometimes he wasn't served in bars or cafes or whatever. He was told to get out, and the police are always aggressive. And it's built up and built up until 1981 when the area exploded. It just exploded with this fury against the police. And I got caught up with that. I was an 18-year-old man at the time, and I was throwing bricks, fighting with the police. And I was arrested for that some time later. And I served time in prison, a few months in prison. But it was a good, sometimes you got to make good out of a bad situation.
Right.
And so whilst in prison, I met this Rastafarian. He was a bit older than me, but he was an avid reader. And so he got me back to reading again.
Oh, wow.
And one of the first titles he offered me to read was The Black Jacobins by the great C.L.R. James. And that tells a story of the Haitian Revolution of 1791, led by Toussaint Louverture. And that's what got me back, got me hungry. I wanted to learn about not just Black American history, but Caribbean and African. And so I came out a much more educated young man than I entered. So, you have to try and make that switch, make that change. And so it done me a world of good. It gave me confidence as well, because I was quite ignorant about my past because I didn't grow up with my family or my parents, so I had no reference points. And so reading gave me that. It gave me a sense of identity. That with the music as well, the music coming out of Jamaica at the time as well. I mean, this is, in my formative years, 15, 16, 17, I was listening to Bob Marley, Burning Spear, Peter Tosh, Dennis Brown, all these reggae artists. And that just shaped me and formed me to the writer I am today.
Okay. And when you're talking about music, you're also a DJ. So tell me about your DJ career. And because I know music is such a big thing, particularly in a place like Brixton. I remember Eddie Grant talking about Electric Avenue. The first place I wanted to go in Brixton was Electric Avenue. So tell us about that DJ history.
Well, when I went to Brixton, it seemed like every other guy was trying to be a DJ. When you used to go to one of the main streets, the main hubs where people would hang out, there were people with their pencils and their notepads trying to write a lyric, getting ready for the weekend performances. Right. And I loved that vibe. I'm not quite sure. Maybe in New York, you can compare it to somewhere like Greenwich Village or something like that. Just a creative area zone where people try to create. And I was like that. And so that is where I wrote my first poetry and my first lyrics. And that is where round about the riot time, I wrote Uprising. Uprising. This uprising, we're sick and tired of the ghetto housing and the jam sosla and police beating. We have no work and we have no shilling. We can't take no more of this suffering. You better send for the army and the home guard. We got to mash up and burn down New Scotland Yard and so on. Wow. That's where I got the energy from.
Wow.
I wrote that at 17, 18. Oh, so wow. It's incredible to be around like-minded people who want to create and comment on your work while you're creating it.
Okay.
because sometimes creating alone is not so easy, but because there was this hub of creatives, DJs, poets, and so on. I mean, have you heard of Linton Kwesi Johnson?
Yes, yeah, dub poet.
Dub poet.
Yes,
He
yes.
he lived in central Brixton as well, so we was all inspired by him and others. So, and obviously what was coming from Jamaica, and so all this helped me become the writer I am today.
Okay. And Kathy, you had a question?
So, one of my questions I was going to ask for anyone who's interested in getting into writing, what are some of the tips that you would actually tell them to actually get started?
Well, the tip is for me is to write the story you would like to buy. Write the story that you feel passionate about, that you feel for, that is burning in your chest, that you want to tell the world. Don't try to imitate anybody. Just be yourself and write the story that you would enjoy reading. I think that's the best tip I can give. And once you start, just try to tend to it every day if you can, or every time you got a free time, just tend to it and nurse it along. You don't have to write thousands of words every day, but just accumulate, just form a discipline and a habit to keep going. And writing a novel, you can have your bad days, your very bad days, and you might have a good day in between somewhere, but keep going and believe in the story you're telling, because everyone's story is worth something. Is there's a value placed on it, and sometimes for our narrative, sometimes the status quo says that our stories are not valuable, but we have to believe that our stories, no matter how small or how large or how grand, they're important. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer in Georgia. It doesn't matter if you work on a boat in Louisiana. Your story is still important as much as anybody else's. And so I understood that from a very young age, from when I was 18. And that's what I always believed, that what I had to tell, what I had to narrate was important. And no one's going to tell me any different.
Okay, definitely.
And I heard you also gave pointers of with the new generation of children that's out there to appeal to them. How did you go about getting some of the new lingo that they speak compared to back in the day?
Right. Well, to be honest, my Crompton series, my young adult series, much of the lingo is invented. Because I'm 57 now, I cannot keep up with these young guys and girls with their banter and their slang and so on. So what I do, I dip into different cultures: hip hop culture, reggae culture, street culture, wherever I find it, and I mix it up in my literary pot, and I produce it on a page. And I used to be a youth worker as well, so that was a nice influence for me, where I could get the rhythm of the banter as young people always have, no matter where you go. I'm sure it's the same in Atlanta where you are. Right. You can hear a colourful phrase on a bus or in town or in the mall. And so I've always been inspired by present slang trends. I've always been inspired by that. So I try to use it when I can, but some of it I invent.
Okay. And also, I was going to ask you about, you mentioned Linton Kwesi Johnson. He was part of the Black Power movement.
Yes,
and thing is, we know of our history here, but of course we have a connectivity as Black people, as people that are oppressed. Could you speak to how the Black Power movement in London affected you, might have influenced your writing as well?
Yes, indeed. We had the Black Panthers that grew from Brixton, and it was started by women. An incredible woman called Althea LeCointe Jones. She started the Black wing of the Black Panthers in the early 1970s. But even before that, we had activists like Olive Morris, who at 17 was brutally beaten up by the police and threatened with rape and all kinds of terrible things happened to her. And she was very much an inspirer of people who followed her. And so Brixton has a long history of that. And Linton Kwesi Johnson, he was inspired by that also to start to write his poetry. And so it's always been, there's always been an activist feel or a rebellious feel in Brixton. It's where we published our first black newsletters and journals and newspapers and so on. That happened in Brixton.
Okay.
It's where C.L.R. James, he resided for quite a long while, and he would there would be a hub of intellectual thinkers and activists, and they would meet up together, and they would decide, what should be published and what should be said and what should be said to the youth. And when I first went to Brixton, I would go to meetings, Black Panther meetings, see what was being said and so on, and take inspiration from that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there was a very powerful, Black Power as well as Black Panther movement. I've read about the British Black Panthers for years because I have a connection to the Panther movement here in America, second generation wise, and to look at some of the same struggles, even up into the '90s with Stephen Lawrence and his death. Matter of fact, there was a group called Panther in London that produced a newspaper called Panther. And we were actually part of a collaboration to get that information out. So again, in terms of just sharing your story, sharing your life, is that the inspiration why you do it, to share?
Absolutely. As I said, our stories, our experiences are very important, and sometimes I feel the Black Panthers are misunderstood, because my experience of it is that they wanted to educate, and so they were disillusioned with the education system in the UK, where you only learn about kings and queens of British history and so forth. You never got to hear about Africa or what happened in the Caribbean and so on. And so they started to open these Saturday schools, and where you could send your kids to, and they would learn a different narrative, and they would be informed by that narrative. For example, I've just written an article about how this young Black boy, he went to school at 12 years of age, and the history teacher's telling him that Christopher Columbus founded the USA and the Caribbean.
Right. Yeah.
And this kid who attended Saturday schools said, no, he didn't. There were Arawaks and Caribs and so on who were there in the Caribbean before Columbus got there. So it was a different way of teaching young people Black history and education. And so
that's kind of like the liberation schools we had here.
Yes.
Yeah. Liberating your mind.
That's right. Yeah. And so the Black Panthers, in my experience, they were more about trying to inform the proper history and the correct history and Black history.
Okay. Kathy, you have a question there?
One of the questions I had, basically, coming back, I looked at YouTube, and another thing I noticed, you were actually doing speeches in front of a group talking about prisons and the arts and crafts being in prisons. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And is that a program?
Yeah. It wasn't so much a program, but it's something that I decided I want to get involved with. Especially, I guess it's just like the US, where for our representation in prisons is so overstretched, if you like. It's so we're too overrepresented in prison. And for me, I would try to give these Black prisoners hope, that they can attain, they can somehow finish their term and come out and make a contribution to society. And so I was trying to, install some belief in them, and that, hey, you don't have to necessarily believe what your former schoolmasters said or what the educational system said about you, because I was in exactly that same position. I've been expelled from 3 schools in the UK because I don't think they understood or didn't care about the trauma that I carried from the children's home. And there's a lot of neglect, if you like, in our communities. And so sometimes when young people maybe take the wrong turn or do a wrong thing, they think their life is over. And I guess I saw myself as at least trying to attempt them to think, no, life is not over yet, because I believe everybody has some kind of talent. And we have to find out where that talent is. And for me, that's our duty, to locate that and then try to express that to the world. And, and this is where the middle class have such an advantage over us, because they have prep schools and so on. And when they go to their fee-paying schools, like they have in the UK, they have so many activities to enjoy. They could learn ballet dancing. They could learn so many things. They're exposed to all kinds of art. They're going to Shakespeare shows when they're 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
And so whatever their talent is can be brought out. But in our instances, in our circumstances, if you're living in the projects or you're living in somewhere that's poverty stricken, how are we going to expose our young people to the arts where they can be inspired to ask questions of themselves? Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could try that. Maybe I'd like to try that. So this is what we need to do, because teaching is not just about math or English. It's also about the art inside us as well.
Yeah, I would say Pablo Picasso, when he said that our goal in life is to discover our gift, our purpose in life is to give it away. And you certainly have shared your gift. And after the, in terms of what's next for you after your latest book, I mean, do you have some future things, or you just deal with it in time and present, or how does that work for you?
I've just finished another historical text, fiction. This time, the protagonist is a female, a black female. I'm not going to say too much about that, but you can expect that to the latter end of 2021, maybe early 2022.
Okay.
I want to perhaps get involved with maybe writing TV shorts or film shorts, and maybe going on to write something for television, or I want to enter that world, if you like, see how I can express myself in that medium, and teach as well. I think teaching is very important for me, so I'll carry on doing that whenever I can. And that's my goal for the next 2-3 years, to carry on teaching and to expand my art form, if you like, not just novels or books, but also onto a television and film platform.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask about that because I could see so many of your works. I mean, from '99 up until now. I mean, you've had an extraordinary literary career as a novelist, and do you see that on the big screen? I mean, you already get the accolades from Mr. McQueen and others.
Yeah. I hope so. I very much hope so. I mean, there's a few things we're working on at the present time, but to get something greenlit is never guaranteed. So I cannot promise you anything, but I can promise you that I'm working hard to get there.
Okay.
And I know we have to start and ask this question as well. I saw you met the Queen. Can you tell us a little bit about what transpired there?
Yes, that was very interesting because I was nominated to receive a medal from the Queen for my contribution to literature and so on. And when the letter first came, it comes in a very big envelope, and it's got this big stamp on it, this big, and I thought, oh my God, is that the police wants to me in?
Okay.
And to be honest, I did have a debate whether I should accept this, because there's been many people who have turned it down. But I felt, growing up, hardly anybody applauded me for doing anything. Right. And so someone's recognized that I've done something good. And with that in mind, I decided to accept it. And it was a strange day. I went to Buckingham Palace, met the Queen, and I felt, I was thinking of my mother, actually. I was thinking of her as I accepted the award, because she gave birth to me in very troubling times, for her personally. And for me, it was to show her that her struggle, her pain was worthwhile. Her son had gone to Buckingham Palace and received a medal from the Queen.
Wow.
I mean, so yeah, it made her proud.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
So when I watched that on YouTube, I felt proud to be there with you.
Yeah.
And how can people reach out to you in terms of getting your books, get contact information? How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, I have a website,
Okay.
www.alexsweetle.com. So anybody can contact me through that. I don't have no PAs working for me, so everyone will get a reply from me.
Okay.
So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, quite approachable.
Okay.
So and I enjoy that because sometimes writers we work in silence and in isolation. So it's nice to receive something from a reader of your works or anything like that. So we always enjoy that. So that is all welcome.
Okay. All right.
I was gonna say because I enjoyed watching it on YouTube as you went and told your story. I love when you end up telling one of the ladies, "I need to stand up to speak on this one and read."
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and we
Yeah.
want to definitely thank you for appearing on the Vanguard show. It's been very enlightening, and we hope that we can kind of get together with you after all this pandemic
Yeah.
stuff is over.
Yeah.
What's your take on some of the political stuff going on here that we kind of talked a
Yeah.
little bit about? As much as you
Yeah,
can say.
I'd enjoy that, but Atlanta's very much on my list.
Okay.
I mean, I've got family in Washington D.C. and Miami, so maybe I need to make a stop in Atlanta before I visit my sisters in Miami.
Okay. Well, we got the spot for you. Plus, I was born in Miami.
Right. Okay. Well,
Well, it's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to say thank you for having me on. Is this live?
Oh, we
It's-
appreciate it.
This is actually, like I say, it's going to be posted on all social medias, and I'm going to send you a personal copy as well. But it's definitely live right now.
Okay. All right. So I'll look out for that. Please send me a link and I'll share that with my folks in the US.
Okay.
Oh, same here. We appreciate you for being on the show, and also be safe.
And you be safe too.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day, and thank you again.
Take care.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes,
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.